The public can participate in this meeting remotely, but not in person by calling 646-558-8656, webinar ID 960-565-5746, or join at the listed https google.com Zoom meeting posted on our agenda with the password is 881156. For additional details, please see events calendar on district website. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda with notice that we are in compliance, as mentioned, with the Executive Order 2050. And I'd like to make mention that we have all Fiscal Management Subcommittee members present on this meeting. Pleasure of the committee.
Motion to approve.
Mr. DeMonica makes a motion to approve. Do I have a second? Second by Mrs. Bernardo. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, ayes have it, 3-0. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes, which have been tabled. They're done. I just did not upload them, so we'll get that on the next meeting in 2 weeks. Next item on the agenda is the payment of bills. Mr. Prignano, welcome.
You're muted, Alex.
Mute, Mr. Prignano. Does anyone?
How are
have
you,
any
Mr. Salvatore?
questions? Hello, welcome. Does anyone have any questions for the payment of bills
No.
in the amount of $834,792.61? I approve. I reviewed them. I did not have any questions.
You'll notice that it's 400,000 plus in each fiscal year. We're still paying bills from last year.
432 and
They're started.
402.
So there's two different ledgers.
All right. Yep, I see that, Mr. Prignano. Pleasure of the committee for approval.
Motion to approve.
Mr. DeMonica makes a motion for the two segments of payments of bills totaling $834,792.61. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Bernardo. This is like a tape recorder, right? We just, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, 3-0.
Ray, I have a
Okay.
question for Alex.
Mr. DeMonica.
Alex, in regards to the budget, are we close to closing out the year, knowing how much money we're gonna save in utilities?
Yeah,
Sorry.
I'm going to give you a report on June in just a couple of minutes.
All right, thank you.
Mr. DeMonica, next item on the agenda, Sedesco Food Services Report. We went through that 2 weeks ago. Mr. Prignano, do we have any update on that?
No,
Nothing?
Alex, Ray, you skipped business office monthly
Oh,
reports.
I apologize. Thank you, Mr. DeMonica. Next item on the agenda, Business Office Monthly Reports. Mr. Prignano.
yes, in response to what Paul was just talking about, and he was referring to the electric bills, but you see the two ledgers tonight, $400,000 of bills were for last year. We're trying to close out purchase orders, get receiving copies in from schools so that we can, get a really good handle on where we are as soon as possible. The report that I'm gonna show you tonight, if you look at the revenue page, shows us now last month that was $109,000 shortfall. It's now 2.7 million. So a couple of things happened. One, we talk about it every year, but the money that's paid in by retirees and for current employees and their co-pays, that money gets zeroed out and closed against claims. So those revenues were $1,969,000. They're now zero. So that drops, obviously, that dropped the revenue by quite a bit. When we get to the end of the report, you'll notice the healthcare claims dropped from just about 7 million down into the $5 million range, 4 million change range. So, but the other thing that happened is, and everyone knows that this was coming, the state withheld $530,000 of state aid. So if you look at the fourth line down on the revenue report, you'll see a $559,000 shortfall. We were going to be short a couple of bucks, but the $530,000 reduction. Now, when that is paid, I guess we'll be able to take that back into this year. Doesn't matter. We're going to use every penny of it for Chromebooks. So whether we bring it back into this year or let it stay in next year, we're going to spend it instantly on the Chromebooks we think we need to replenish, do the sixth grade, and replenish the elementary schools. So that accounts for the major reduction in revenues.
Alex, can you just refresh us why they state withheld the 530,000?
Well, what they did is because they couldn't balance their budget, with the economy closing down basically in March. So they had $41 million of CARES money that they got from the federal government, and they chose to use that to replace state aid. So they're replacing $41 million to all the districts in the state with this federal money and scooping that same amount in state aid. So it was a $41 million budget solution for them for last year. That's why the Auditor General is probably going to have to, even though it's going to come in, middle of July, the end of July, no one's exactly sure. But the Auditor General, I'm sure, will allow school districts to book it back into June, because it could cause some deficits for some districts. I don't know. Most districts you would think were in pretty good shape because of the COVID, but I don't know who paid busing and what, everything that happened with every district. So there may be some districts that need that money to be recorded in 2020, not 21. We obviously don't, because we had so much savings in the transportation.
But is that the 620 amount?
No, that's 530,000. It's actually 83% of your Title I money.
Okay.
And so it comes with strings, and Tony DeMonter and I are going to work on that at the beginning of this week. As you know, Tony and Bob and others in the administration have been busy finishing up the plans that they got to submit July 17th. So
Right.
to get that behind us, we will do the application for that $530,000,
Okay.
which we're hoping to use all towards technology. The original plan was to use it for technology. The
Mr. Pignano,
636 is the second pot of money that they haven't yet. They haven't made available to even apply for yet.
Okay.
So
Thank-
so that's the revenue. That's the revenue sheet. If you go to the if we go to the last page, the next to the last page where the totals are for that for the expenditures, you'll see at the bottom a $4,790,000 positive surplus on the expenditure side. And basically, if you look up in the benefits, you see $1,713,000, and you see 252 in areas of healthcare and dental that got closed. That claims are reduced by those co-payments that people make, part of that GASB 54 entry that happens. So, so that leads us to having, about a $2 million surplus in benefits, that offsets the shortfall on the revenue side.
that's the 2,067,000, 2,067,258. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. So then, so you can see, you can see the net revenues and expenditures, 2,067,258. And we had talked, I don't know if you recall, but I had said that our surplus would balloon this year. If you look at our audited statements, it's 3,777,000 right now, and it was going to balloon close to $6 million. And so if you go to the next page at the bottom, you'll see the potential fund balance. You'll see the 3,766,000 and the 2,067,000 being added to it. Now that's a draft number. There's going to be there's things to pay and some small revenues that will come in, but it's going to be in that area. So you see the 5,833,000. And then if we use 3,200,000 of that 5 million, like I said, it would balloon, and we would take 3,200,000 or so right out of it in 21, and it'll drop the surplus back into that 2,600,000. It was 3,700,000, so it'll actually be $1 million less.
Mhm.
And then we gotta hope to find a way that not to use all that 2,621,000 to make up for the net one-timers that we used in this year's budget, or we will be down to under $1 million in surplus. So next year is gonna be a very, very difficult and key year for us. We're gonna need state aid. We're gonna, we're gonna need the town support, not to bring our surplus to a really dangerous level. Up above that, though, you see I had listed where I thought we were in May with the COVID money. So May, I was predicting 300 in utilities. I think we're going to end up at 306, 258.
Okay.
Transportation savings, 975. Healthcare claims, we were being conservative at 300,000 and ended up being 588,000. Not to the good, but better than where we were in March. We were 823 in the red in March, and we ended up being about 255,000 before we made those accounting entries for co-pays and, but the real number, we overspent healthcare claims without that, about 255,000 instead of 823. The lost revenues, tuitions and rentals came in a little bit better, 68,000. And then the substitute teacher savings were about 243. I had estimated 230. So we did better in the COVID, 1,889,000 to 2,247,000. But my projection for the regular surplus that wouldn't have had anything to do with COVID was 401, you can see in May, and it ended up 180,000 short. And basically that's the $530,000 that lost state aid from, if you add that 530 to it, we had a slight, we would have dropped a little bit under 400,000, but we wouldn't have been in the red 180,000. And I note that lost state aid in 530. So anyhow, that's kind of an update where we are. And now we're going to have to, figure out how, we're going to be, and we've been working on it as we go. We'll kind of wait until we know exactly the plan we adopt and where we go, but we're going to have to work. We'll be coming forward with a number of budget adjustments to make in the budget that the town passed, because that budget, as you recall, was based on, kind of a normal year. For example, we have $50,000 in that budget for cleaning supplies. We're going to need over $400,000 from what Will and I have been working on the last few days. So we'll be coming in with adjustments. Any questions on the report?
Okay. Any questions from the committee members? Mr. Primato, I will say you were jumping around a lot on that spreadsheet. Do you remember the old Saturday Night Live segment? It's a Greek restaurant and a guy comes in, he's ordering all the food and the cook turns around and says, cheeseburger, cheeseburger. Anyway, if anybody has any additional questions on this, I do encourage you to reach out to Mr. Prignano to review the spreadsheet. Okay, moving forward. Thank you, Mr. Prignano. Next item on the agenda, Sodesco Food Service Report. Mr. Prignano, we're all set on that?
Yep.
Hey, I have a question on that. And this
Mr.
would go to Bob. Bob, are we going to get an update from Shauna of how many food stations we're going to have to put in the high school and other places? I know yesterday during your meeting, you talked about Sodesco and where they're going to need to put the food stations. Will we get an update on that eventually?
Yes, we need to have that conversation. And coincidentally, Tony Damana and I had a conversation with Mr. Costa today. We're thinking of all of the potential places that we can feed students. And one of the, we were thinking today that we may need to use the trans caf, and we also may need to use the trans gym. So that gives us a little more flexibility. Ideally, we'll be able to provide lunch for those ninth grade students that are in the trans building. So yes.
Some districts, they're eating lunch in the classrooms.
Right. Well, there's no question that we're going to have to be doing that as well. It's going to be a combination of cafeteria and classrooms, probably more classrooms than cafeteria in some of those other open spaces. So we are already planning Mrs. Friedman and Mr. DeMonica, who Mrs. Friedman's on the task force, and Mr. DeMonica attends those to get a sense of all the work that has to be done. That is an issue that we're going to be dealing with, no question about it. How we're going to feed all of these students, that's a challenge.
Okay,
Yeah, and if I can chime in too, Bob, and thank you for that. Yes, we've been actively working with each principals. Every level is going to have a different set of stipulations with building logistics, obviously the amount of classrooms. So we are working on that. I've had a few meetings with each of the principals over the last couple weeks. But again, we were waiting for kind of a more solid plan with your submission to RIDE to kind of do some action planning with that. So looking forward to a lot of different planning going on the next few weeks.
all right, thank you, Shona.
Thank you, Shauna. Next item on the agenda, discussion, only a discussion regarding the playground repairs. Mrs. Bernardo, did you want to spearhead this?
Alex, and can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Now.
I can hear you now. Yep.
We do have this
That
Yeah.
packet. Yeah, that was in the drive.
So the document I put in there, those were like just my personal observations when I did the walkthrough with Alex and Will. But if you wanted to see what the playground people said, that's in the drive too, in the June
Yep.
folder,
Okay.
compare it. But what we did is we just kind of walked through all the playgrounds, kind of compared notes, but with like everything that the playground company basically pointed out. And so what my notes are reflecting are like my opinion basically on what the priorities are. There are clearly some repairs that need to be done. That it's unsafe, completely broken equipment, that kind of thing. And some of the other things with the playground, which you'd see in my notes is like community specifically, they mentioned pretty much most of the walking platforms. And really it's about that kind of like that rubberized coating that is wearing off, but it's not like the structure is unsafe. There's no holes in it. There's nothing for students to fall through on, except, if there's something it's noted if there is. So some of the repairs seem like it's important to address this sooner rather than later. And some of the equipment conditioning is something to kind of pay attention to, and it will eventually need to be replaced, but I don't think it's the emergency that it has to be done now. I don't know what our budget is for playground maintenance, to be honest, like as far as like, what are we looking at that we can afford to invest in it? But clearly there are things that need to be addressed at pretty much all of them.
I don't even know if the kids will be able to even go in the playgrounds with the COVID. Well, I'm not saying.
They may not I know we talked
I'm
about
just saying.
like in the fall they may not be able to, but
Yeah.
even then we still have community members that are going to
Oh,
potentially.
absolutely.
So we can have kids on those playgrounds at any time.
Mr. Mitchell?
Just
You're done, Mrs.
to build on what Mrs. Bernardo just shared with all of you, and you have that document which she color coded, and we know that I think we have a responsibility, to avoid any potential liability situation, to fix those things that we know we need to fix. And to answer your question about playground budget, that is 0. So we're gonna need to find a way to fix those things that absolutely positively need to get fixed, even though, under the circumstances with all of this craziness with this coronavirus, I think we still have a responsibility to fix those things that we are concerned may cause some sort of an injury. So Will is getting some prices on what the cost will be to repair those things.
Mr. Mitchell, are there any grants we can apply for? Is there any special, I don't know, anything?
Well, you know what? I mean, I guess that's always a possibility. So certainly we can consider that. But right off the top of my head, Mr. Salvatore,
Sure.
I can't think of anything. But I mean, I think we can certainly, do a little research and maybe we'll get lucky. But I think there are some things we definitely need to do.
Game time
Mrs. Bernardo.
on the BF playground, and they do occasionally have grant programs you can apply for repairing, replacing, or adding equipment. playground companies have grants currently available to apply for. Never know. You can't-
Basically, the items on this list that Bernardo's talking about total about 15,769. And two of the items are 10,484. One of the items.
Bernardo, we're talking about just community, correct? Just
No,
community?
all the items total.
This whole packet is 15,000?
Right. The ones that were color coded, yellow or whatever the color was.
That's actually
There's
not
two
bad.
expensive items. Many of them are $125, $150 type items. It's a hexagon bridge at Ashton that is broken, but totally safe right now because it's completely blocked off. Kids can't use it. And then there was a octagon deck at Community that one piece of it, Jen, right, was kind of had let go and maybe someone could go through there. And we were going to look to see on the octagon if we could replace just one section. Because it was $5,900 to replace the whole piece, but maybe just a section could be replaced. So we'll look into it with Will.
Well, I know money is tight, but 15K, I'm sure we can dig out of some kind of, Mrs. Bernardo, you're on mute.
Sorry. So yeah, that's much better. When you looked at the original quote for like everything, I mean, it was quite a price tag, but when you kind of looked at the priorities and, that's actually much better. There's I think there's one piece of equipment that was almost 15 grand. It was like, oh my God.
So the yellow is the priority items, Mr. Mitchell or Ms. Bernardo? And that totals 15,000.
And that's what Alex said, yeah.
Just under 16.
That's pretty reasonable. I think that's pretty reachable. I think maybe for our next finance meeting, we'll dig into this a little bit more, Mr. Prignano, to see what we can come up with.
I agree.
Right.
Okay.
What's another pound on an elephant?
Just another pound. All right. Thank you, Mr. Prignano. We'll be talking early next week to try to resolve this. And I encourage any other committee members, if they have any input, to reach out to
We're going
us.
to come to you with a revised budget. We'll try to include this in it.
Okay. Next, real quick, Mr. Prignano, I do recall many years ago, there was some kind of former class of like 63 that always left money. Remember?
Yeah, we used a lot of that money for over the last few years to do the sign that's on the front lawn now. A lot of the classes left excess money that they had for years sitting there so that we could put that sign in, the one with the electronic
Oh,
one.
yeah.
That's how we did that.
We don't, so there's no money left over in any of these classes?
We can look, at, it builds up here and there. Usually though, the newer classes that just graduated, they're gonna want to save that for some of their reunions that will come up,
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Brignano. Next item on the agenda, discussion and/or vote for the teacher substitute pay. This was in everyone's drive as well. Who would like to take this, Mr. Mitchell?
If I may, just to, and then I'll turn it over to Mrs. Duncanson. It's going to be interesting to see how this substitute situation plays out. And as you know, getting substitutes is a challenge, not only for Cumberland, but for every school district in the state. And so many districts have increased their daily substitute rate. And given the unique circumstances of this coronavirus, we anticipate that we're going to be needing more subs. So we're going to be needing more of something that we've had a difficult time getting in the past without the pandemic. So I appreciate the work that Mrs. Duncanson has done on this, and I'm going to ask her to walk you through this document that she created for you all.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Mrs. Duncanson?
Thank you. So this is part of the return plan, and it's really based on a lot of assumptions. So I don't think we're at a point where we should be adding any of my estimates to any budget. There's a lot of things that have to fall into place before we can even think about this. But what I'm looking for today is an increase, is an approval for the increase in the compensation for substitutes for two categories of substitutes. So as you know, as Mr. Mitchell stated, there is a statewide, and I would probably say nationwide, shortage of substitute teachers. It's a tough job. It was tough when I went to school, and I'm sure it's even more tough now. It's thankless, and with all due respect, we, meaning every district in the state, pay very little for that work. The daily screening procedures that our plan are going to require for staff and students, but today I'm talking just about staff. If you've looked at that document, it's really going to make a lot of people stay home when otherwise they would have come to work. So the staff member who has a cough that can't be attributed to allergies, but probably is just a little cough and not at all associated with COVID, will be required to stay home. If you have a headache, you have to stay home. If you are tired, which we are all tired right now, you have to stay home. And there's no, like, if you weren't up with a baby or like with an explanation, you have to stay home. So there's gonna be a lot more, I don't know if it's, there's gonna be a lot more opportunity for staff to stay home. There's additional laws that require us to pay people until the end of the calendar year for more sick days. Most people it won't apply for because we have so many sick days accumulated, but there's going to be some group that it will apply for. Additionally, especially in the elementary with the stable group requirements, we aren't going to be able to really share our substitutes too drastically between schools, and so we're going to have to lock those in, especially out of district. So a lot of our substitutes work in other neighboring districts for they're off when they can't get a job here, they go there. It's just a survival mode, and they want to be known to as many districts as possible because a lot of them want to be teachers eventually. So they want to, earn their spot. So what I provided you in that document is really a proposal for two increases. The first one is to provide 16 building substitutes to be allocated by need, basically. So some schools will get more than others, but 16, this might be a low number, but 16 building substitutes at a rate of $150 a day. And what my proposal is that as long as we're in session, we would need them every single day. So my estimate on that is at least 90 days of work for the school year. I'm hoping that we're at least in session 90 days for next year, because I think that's a pretty low estimate for that. So they would be working at one school for at least 90 days next year at a rate of $150 a day. And what that would do is it would secure us a person in that school that's not going to other schools in the district and also not going to other districts and cross-contaminating our stable groups.
How much are we paying our substitutes now?
85.
Ooh, so this will be an increase. I'm just kind of curious.
But we can't get them, yeah. So, and it's.
Mr. Collins, how much is Massachusetts paying?
Taunton High School pays 85. I think it's without a certification. If you have a certification, it goes up to 95. But when I started substituting in Boston almost 20 years ago, I was making 130 a day. So, and now Boston's paying about 250 a day. We can't compete with Boston, but 85 to 100 is the going rate. So I think it's a good idea because it makes it more marketable. And I think with a lot of kids, potential students, substitutes who are students. I found at Taunton, we get a lot of kids who are aspiring teachers. So they fill in, when they don't have class. But with these kids doing a lot of remote learning now, there's going to be more availability. So I think if we struggle finding substitutes, I think we could reach out to Providence College, Rick,
Gotcha.
Anybody who has an education program. But those are the two big ones within driving distance at Cumberland.
Thank you. Mr. DeMonica.
Nothing.
Katie, why only 90 days if school's in for 180?
So that's I don't want to bind the district in any, so the only way that we can get a substitute at that rate, which is, by the way, about $21 and change an hour for that. So the only way we can get them to agree to come to school every single day and not leave us for another job is to guarantee a certain amount of work. I don't want to bind the district to 180 days of work when we might not be in session for 180 days. We might have to break for periods during the year. So we're at least guaranteeing 90 days of the year. It might go over that. And my estimate doesn't go over that, but we might go over that. I just don't want to pay double. It's already an expensive endeavor. To double it would be, $500,000. So close to $500,000. Yeah.
Okay, Alex, there's a question.
Yeah, I see exactly what Kate's doing. She doesn't want to commit to money that if we're not in school, we're not going to pay. But for budget purposes, we'll have to budget 180 days.
You'll have to budget. Yeah, you'll have to budget 180, but I don't think that we'll be in school for 180 days. I think we're going to have the rolling model.
Right.
Someone just brought up a good point to
I
me.
would be very surprised if we see 180 days, but you'll have to budget it just in case.
1 minute, Mr. DeMonica and Mr. Collins. Mrs. Duncanson, isn't there a limit on how many days a sub can work?
The limit on subs, there is a limit for like 135 for like step and level if they're in one job. I'm not sure how this would, I would have to look into how this would affect that. If you're talking a retiree, they can only commit to 90 days.
Oh, gotcha. Mr. Collins?
I have a
You first.
question. Yeah, when it comes to bidding or assigning substitutes, do we have an automated system in Cumberland, or is it still the old-fashioned call you at 5 o'clock in the morning?
No, we use Frontline or ASOP.
Oh, Frontline.
Yeah.
That's what
So,
we use, which is great. For the people who don't know, it's great because the sub can just, they see they need a high school history teacher and they just click on that. And
Right.
it makes it a lot easier to get subs, I think.
Mr.
Yeah.
DeMonica? And then Mrs. Duncanson will have you finish the next sheet.
This was for Alex. Is this going to cost us medical and pension as well on top of this?
It probably would cost you medical if they work a certain number of hours and days. Not pension though.
All right, thank you.
Right, Mrs. Duncanson?
So that would be my building-based substitute proposal. I have checked with my colleagues in other districts. They are doing a kind of similar model to this. Some can't do quite to that level just because of the size of the districts. But it does add up quickly. But the 150 is pretty much an agreement that the rate for building dedicated subs that make a commitment to us. The second part of this is, so our fill rate last year was 60 to 65% on any given day. Of course, there were days that were higher and days that were lower than that. So I'm not going to be able to fill every absence with the 16 building-based subs, and especially with absenteeism going up the way I'm expecting it to. And I'm not accusing anybody of abusing the sick leave. I think that the screening tool is really, if it's going to do what it's going to do, people are going to stay home. So I'm proposing raising the $85 to $100 a day for those who are coming in on a day-to-day basis using that frontline ASOP system for absenteeism. Obviously, we're going to have some precautions for those individuals as they are not part of stable groups and they are not. I'm hoping to really limit elementary use in them, but that's the proposal for just to become a little bit more attractive in the state to come to Cumberland.
Oh, Mrs. Duncanson, I apologize.
Yep.
What's the difference between the first sheet and the second sheet on the 16 building and the 30 substitutes and the 150 a day and the 100 a day?
No, so I'm estimating that we're going to need, in addition to the 16 building-based substitutes, I'm estimating that we're going to need an additional 30 based on last year's numbers.
But why, I'm just curious, why less money, 150 compared to 100?
because we're not committing any length of
Okay.
time to these individuals.
I
They're
got
just grabbing a day here and a day there in really day-to-day positions. Some people don't want to commit to us. They have their own commitments on their own, and they just want a day-to-day sub situation.
No, it just clicked in. I apologize.
Yeah. So I'm estimating that based on last year's numbers, we're probably going to need about 30 substitutes in addition to those building-based substitutes per day in the district. And I am estimating that at 180 school days. So that would be an additional 300. If we have 100% or 60% fill rate, which I'm not anticipating we will next year, it will be an additional 324,000, which is in the budget of our current substitute budget. I think we have about 375 in that budget right now. So if we did this, it would be in that. It's the first proposal that would be outside of that budget.
Mrs. Duncanson, I do have a question that just came in. If someone's brand new, out of school, so out of school and college, and they want to sub for the district, do they become part of the bargaining unit after a certain number of days of this employment as a sub?
No.
Okay.
They don't, unless they're hired for a permanent job.
Unless they're hired for a permanent job. Okay. All right. Any other questions? So this is up for a vote to send it to the full committee. This is something that administration supports, correct, Mr. Mitchell? This is.
Yes, sir.
So pleasure of the committee.
Make a motion, we approve the change in substitution pay.
Mr. DeMonica makes a motion to vote for the teacher substitute pay increase of the two segments. So I have a second.
Second.
By Mrs. Bernardo, all in favor? Aye. Ayes have it, 3-0 passed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Duncanson and Mr. Mitchell. Next item on the agenda, discussion and a vote on Sedesco food service contract and amendment, which is in our drive. Mr. Mitchell, did you want to take this one or Mr. Pignano to start it?
Well, we did meet with Sedexo, Mike Gray, who is, I don't know, he's a vice president, and we had a good meeting with them. Alex and Steve Adams, Mr. DeMonica too, weighed in on the contract, and Sedexo agreed to all of the recommended changes. I don't know, do we actually have them? Has that been completed yet, Alex? I didn't think so.
Yeah, I got, it wasn't, and the contract came in late this afternoon. And that's why I think Shauna's still on the call in case we have any questions with it for her. But came in late this afternoon, and basically, if you recall, and I sent out an email from last December, I think it was December 10th maybe or something. Yeah, last year, 2019, that kind of had the list of items that they were trying to add to the contract. What happened last year is we passed the state contract, and Sedexo, after we had passed the state contract, which the state has a very strict contract that all districts have to follow, Sedexo wanted to add a number of things into the contract. And so, you know, we were back and forth. Basically, Sedexo at this point has agreed to, you know, any of the ones that we had any issues with, that they would, that they're okay with not including in the contract. And there were a couple in there that we didn't mind that they put in. For example, they had one, section 3.1, that talked about the accounting period. We really don't care when their accounting period is, you know, and there were a couple others like that. But the big one was that we had a question or a concern with. They wanted to drop, since we provide insurance in our buildings for the kitchens or whatever, they wanted to drop their push. They wanted to drop paying for coverage. And we had a concern with that. And they've agreed for the small amount of money it costs that they will keep they will also keep the coverage in place. There's one thing with this contract that came up. We used to have an incentive that used to be $210,000 because we had Blackstone Valley and we were making money like, we're making good money in the account, built up a good fund balance in there, and we were able to do a 5-year capital plan where we've pretty much replaced all our kitchen appliances because that money can only be used that way. Without Blackstone Valley now, the budget that we passed last year had them only making a $57,000 profit, and they wanted the incentive to start there. The only question I had on that was they had a $57,000 budget, but we, after that, I believe, maybe some of the finance committee members will recall, we ended up raising the prices at the elementary and middle school lunches a slight amount, and the a la carte items at the high school that was going to generate then around $100,000 surplus from those changes we made. So I really think the incentive should start at that level because that's nothing that Sodexo did. That was an act of the school committee to bring the revenue from 57 to 99. And so I talked with our district manager today, Kristen, and she said, if that's what you want to do, fine, and we'll see it, and then we'll go back to Sodexo. If Sodexo ends up being okay with it, it won't have to come back to you people. If they have an issue, then we'll have to work at that with them, and then we would have to bring the contract back for that item. So
the guarantee is $57,353.
Right, and I would suggest we set it like at 99,000 or something like that. And then I'll talk with Mike Gray.
I agree.
Okay.
So
we
Mr. Chair,
want to.
if there's no questions, I'll make a motion.
Well, Mr. DeMonica, I'm just curious, Mr. Mitchell, Mr. Prignano, should we table this till we wait for the modification?
You could do that, or you could pass it with that modification, and if Mike is okay with it, then we can then move forward with getting the contract done.
My recommendation is to table it. I mean, Mrs. Duncanson, Mr. Mitchell, did you want to weigh in on this?
Well, I think there was a plan to move this along, but if you're more comfortable waiting, we'll wait.
I always get nervous with passing something and then modifications after.
No, you'd modify it now to 99,000 and pass it with before you with that one change. But you
Mrs.
could just
Bernardo,
table
Mr.
it.
DeMonica, how do you feel about this?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I participated in the meeting, and I do, know that Alex did bring it up about the incentive. I mean, I'm comfortable making a motion to modify it 7.8 in the contract here that's in the drive, that the incentive begins at $99,000, and then vote to approve the contract as is. If Sodexo doesn't want to sign it, then we'll have another meeting, telemeeting, and figure it out. But I remember
Is it 7.8 or 7.5?
7.8 is where the incentive is located.
7-8.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I remember, we did change the prices so that we could bring it up to about $99,000, $95,000 in income to the district because of the price changes, because we weren't happy with the 57,000. And we just need to go research our paperwork. I would suggest everybody on the finance department to go look through their records to find it. But I believe we should leave the incentive at $99,000.
And then other than that, one section, the only other section that we probably should have been concerned about was they had proposed a termination clause of 60 days, which I don't think we could ever get anyone in and up and running in 60 days. And so we asked that it go to 90 days, and they agreed to that. So it would give us a little extra time. And then in that case, you'd probably just go up the state bid list, whoever the state bid list vendor was, you'd probably hire them. Because the state goes out each year and has a chosen vendor.
Okay, so we're going to modify 7.8. Is the proposal to modify 7.8 financial incentive, correct,
Right.
Mr. Prignano?
Yes. The others are taken care of. The ones that we were fine with, they've made the changes in the 90 days, and the others, the 7.8 was the only issue of,
So you want to raise it from 57,353 to 99,000?
right, 97, 99, something like that. You want to go, 99's fine.
97, 98, all right. Okay, pleasure of the committee for the modification and the passage.
I
of the
make a motion that
food
we
service.
change the 7.8 to $99,000.
So we modify 7.8 to reflect 99,000.
Right.
Reimbursement, correct?
Take a vote on that.
Mr. Monica makes a motion for the change of 7.8 in the contract to reflect 99,000 for the reimbursement, correct?
Incentive.
Incentive, I apologize, incentive. Do I have a second? Second by Mrs. Bernardo, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, ayes have it, 3-0.
I think it makes it a little stronger that the school committee wanted to go to the 99,000 too, that when we sit down with Sodexo, that we've already passed the contract with 99. And then I'll just point out on that email I did send out, you'll see Mike Gray's responses to the questions underneath. So you
Okay.
can read them.
All right, so we made the modification. So next, so now I need a motion to approve this contract to send it to the full committee.
Make that motion.
Mr. DeMonica makes a motion.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Bernardo, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It passes 3-0 by all members. 3-0 from the modification. Hold on one second. The modification. Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda, discussion and a vote to approve employment contract for the confidential assistant to the Director of Special Services. Mr. Mitchell.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion, or I would ask that you, I'm not going to make a motion. I would ask that you approve this employee contract. She is by all accounts an outstanding, reliable, conscientious employee. We can talk about it in more detail in executive session if you wish, which we're going into in just a couple of minutes. So she really is an outstanding employee, and you have that contract in the drive.
I do. I looked at the contract quickly. I did have a few questions. It's budgeted. This is a budgeted position.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, okay, so hold on one second. And then also, I know all of our contracts kind of align with each other. Will this contract, I did not look at the date of it expires. Does it align with the expiration of the other contracts? You know how, Mr. Mitchell, we had some,
Yeah.
get them all.
This one will now expire on June 30 it's a 3-year contract, so I think it's 2023. But that is the date that we're moving all contracts to expire. So we don't have these outliers, which is just asking for you to miss a deadline.
Okay.
In my.
So this contract will align with the other two contracts.
Well, it extends beyond them because most of the contracts are expiring next year, but it's a 3-year contract that expires on that date. You're going to have other contracts, I think, that will expire on this date. They just haven't been entered into yet because we're not that far out. Get it?
I do. So this is your recommendation?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, pleasure of the committee.
I have a question.
Mr. DeMonica?
This would be for Katie or Bob. Has this woman worked for us before?
Yes.
A long
Yes.
time?
Yeah, moved from one position to this position in the special education office. Yes. Yes.
Right, because normally we do a 1-year contract and then we.
You just left a 1-year contract.
Yeah, she was in a 1 year. That expired.
She was in the 1 year. Okay.
Yes.
I'm good with it.
Okay,
Make a motion, we approve.
Mr. DeMonica makes a motion. Do I have a second? Second by Mrs. Bernardo. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, 3-0. Thank you. Okay, we're getting there. Next item on the agenda, CHS activity reports, which we're all set on. Next item is public comment. Anyone from the public would like to speak? Please make yourself heard or raise a flag or reach out to Mr. Chandler.
Everybody's available if they would like to unmute themselves to have comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chandler. A nice summer day. No one wants to speak up. Okay.
Yeah, I
Hearing
just
none.
got one. I just want to welcome Carrie Smith. I see she's in here as well. I think that's one of the people that's running for office.
Yes, excellent. Welcome, Mrs. Smith.
Thank
And next item, public comment is to adjourn. Pleasure of
Motion
the
to
committee.
adjourn.
Mr. DeMonica makes a motion. Do I have a second? By Mrs. Bernardo. All in favor?
Aye.
Have it, 3-0. Thank you,
All right,
everyone.
so we're gonna go right into executive session. So I'm gonna log out and log back in.
Okay.